I'm Emma, I'm one of the tenants at Making Space, and I'm going to be showing you how I make one of my stone set stacker rings. So to begin with, I get my metal. I've already milled this out to the right size and shape. I've gone with square wire. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use half round pliers, and I'm going to bend that into a roughly round shape. Doesn't matter if it's not completely round at this point. And I'm going to pull it round so that it overlaps a little bit. Okay, and then when that's overlapping, I'm going to use a piercing saw, balance it on my bench peg and cut straight through both of those bits of metal. And then now I've cut through that, I'm going to use some parallel pliers and just bend that so that they're next to each other and close the gap in. So we want it to be a nice tight fit so that when I solder it, the solder will flow nicely through that join. So just make sure it's nicely in line. And then I'm going to solder that closed. So I'm just painting some flux on there at the moment. This means that the solder is going to run nicely down the join. Then I'm going to cut a bit of solder. And we only use a little bit, maybe about that much. I'm just going to heat that up so the flux bubbles up and then disappears. And then place the solder over the join. And then I'm going to heat that up until it runs down where the join is. If you heat it evenly on both sides, then it means that the solder will run where you want it to. Then I'm just going to put that in the pickle, which is an acid that cleans the metal. And then once it comes out of the pickle, it's this white colour. And then the next thing we're going to do is clean up the inside of the solder join. I'm going to use a half round file for this, if I can find the one I want. This one. So I'm going to use the round side, just clean up the inside of that join. There wasn't much excess solder in there, so it shouldn't take too much to get it out. Okay, and then that's what we're looking for. And then the next thing to do is to use some paper and just get rid of those file marks. Got rid of those marks. The next thing is to pop it on a triblet, pull it down, and then use a rawhide mallet, which is one of these, to just knock that round. As I'm doing this, I'm just twisting it round to make sure that it's round the whole way. Okay, and now it's nice and round. We just need to flatten it off because it's a little bit uneven at the moment. So put it on my steel block and just hammer that. Okay, so now that's completely flat. And then the next thing to do is to file the edges of the ring to get rid of all the marks that we've put in with either pliers or with the hammer. Make sure it's nice and even the whole way around. I would usually take a bit more care over this bit, but I'm trying to sort of do it fairly quickly so you're not just watching me file all day. Next thing is to use a buff stick and go over the sides again just to remove all of those file marks that I've just put in. So the next thing to do is to remove the solder from the outside of the ring. There's not a massive amount there at the moment, but I'll just get rid of that. And then I'll use the paper again and go around the outside of the ring. Sorry if any of this is out of shot, I'm holding it at a bit of a funny angle to get the right camera angle, so sorry. Okay, so the inside's nice and smooth, so is all of the outside. I would usually go down a few grits of paper, but I won't do that today. So next I am going to give the ring a polish. So I'm going to move you over to my polishing motor. Clip you in over here. And I'm just going to give the outside of the ring a polish. ring is nice and shiny. My hands are a little bit black, but the ring is nice and shiny. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give the ring a clean in the ultrasonic bath. And that will remove some of the polish, and then I'm going to steam it to get rid of the ring. And then we have a nice clean and shiny ring. So the next thing to do is to solder the setting onto the ring. Ooh. Try and get the right angle again. Okay. So I'm going to solder the setting on. I'm going to make sure that the join to the ring is at the bottom of the ring, and we're soldering the setting on the top. Just means that if it needs sizing at some point in the future, then it's a lot easier. So I'm going to apply the flux again. Heat that up till it bubbles. And then I'm going to use some 9-carat yellow gold solder. We just need a little bit again. All solders for the different metals come in different, they come in all the different carats, and also in easy, medium and hard. And that just means that they will melt at different temperatures, so that if you've got a ring that's got multiple joins on it, all the joins aren't going to pop open as soon as you try and heat it. So I'm going to melt that solder onto the top of the ring before putting the tube on. It's a little bit of a balancing act, trying to get settings onto rings. So now that's melted, I'm going to get my tube. Make sure I filed one of the ends, so I'm going to make sure that that end is the one that's on the ring. And then I'm going to hold it in place and remelt the solder while holding the tube on top. And then, I don't know if you can see, but as the solder melted, it also attached the tube. I think that's in focus. Okay, so I'm just going to put that in the pickle again. And then the next thing to do is to cut it to the right height. So I'd normally leave it in the pickle for a bit longer, so it should be completely clean when it comes out. But that would be very boring for you to watch. So the next thing to do, I'm just going to make sure the tube is straight. Using some parallel pliers, just bend it a little bit into place. There you go. And then I don't want the setting to be too high, so with my saw I'm just going to cut it a couple of millimeters tall. And then I'm just going to file that setting so that it's nice and flat on the top. And so that it's the right height to where I want it. And that's about it. That's about the height that I want. So next I'm just going to go in with a bit of paper again. Get rid of all those file marks and get rid of the burr that's been created by the file around the edge of the setting as well. Okay, and also remove the little bit of solder that was on the side of the ring. The reason I polished this before doing that final soldering was so that around where the setting is, it just needs a bit of a final polish. I just find it works easier. There we go. Okay, so the next thing to do is to set the stone. For this I tend to use a ball bear that I should have prepared before starting the video, but I didn't. So I've got a couple of ball bears here. I'm just going to measure them to see which one is the right diameter for the stone. Okay, so that one's about right. And then I'm going to drill into the tube. And that just creates a seat in the tube for the stone to sit on. So I've got my little stone in here. I'm going to try really hard not to drop this. Okay. I'm just going to make sure that the stone sits nicely in the setting, and it just needs opening out a tiny bit. So I'll pop the stone back down and just drill it out a little bit more. And then pop the stone in again. And it's fallen out. Luckily, the skin caught it. It's not quite sitting in there right, so I'm just going to drill it out a little bit more. And then try again. It's very much sort of trial and error, trying to make sure that it's sitting at the right height and that it sits in there quite nicely. Okay, and that sits in there now. So I'm just going to make sure it's in there at the right height. And then I'm going to use this tool, which is a pusher, and I just use that to push the metal over the top of the stone. And hope that it doesn't jump out at the same time. Okay, so I found the stone that I dropped, and we'll try again. So I'm going to pick the stone up again and drop it into the setting, and just push it down a little bit, make sure it's in there nicely, and then I'm going to use the pusher and just pop that metal over the top. I do it at sort of 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 and 9, just to make sure that the stone's in there nicely and it's sort of evenly in there. And then work my way around. I'm just going to pop it into a ring clamp just to make it a little bit easier for me to hold. Just means I can push against the bench peg a bit easier. And as I go, I'm just going to twist the ring and push the metal over. And then once I'm sure the metal is the whole way over the stone, I'm going to rub the pusher around the edge of the setting, and this is to burnish it, which just means sort of to flatten off the metal and make sure the stone is nice and tight in there. And I'm going to do that the whole way around the edge of the setting, and then also over the top as well. But because I'm using an amethyst, I need to make sure that I'm not putting too much pressure on the stone, because amethysts are very soft, so they can break under pressure. Okay, so the stone is in there nice and securely, and it's looking fairly neat at the moment. Okay, so I'd normally sort of spend a little bit more time on that, just making sure that it's over the stone the whole way round and then it's all nice and smooth, but I will move on to the next stage. So this is how it's looking at the moment. The stone is in the setting, and then the next thing to do is to put some of the oxidized lines along the side of the ring. So to do this, I use a fine saw blade, so I'm just going to change this one out. And use a really fine one instead. So I'm just going to make sure that the saw blade's nice and tight in the frame, so that it gives a nice accurate cut. And then I'll do some saw cuts. So I tend to mark out the end lines that I want to use first, and then I go in and do some cuts in between those. Buff over the top of that to get rid of any of the burr caused by the saw. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side of the setting. And I would usually, there it is, for my dividers. So I'm going to open the dividers out so that it's next to the setting and to the first line. And draw that line on the other side as well, just to make sure that the gap between the setting is equal on both sides. And then after doing that, I'll open them out again and get the measurement for the pattern section and draw that onto the ring as well, and then do another cut there. When I do the patterns, I don't tend to do them sort of even on both sides. I like them to look different. So as long as they're an even spacing, I just kind of do whatever pattern I feel like at the time. And then I'll buff over the top of that again. And that's how it's looking at the moment. And then the next thing to do is to add the oxidizing to those lines. I use this platinum solution, and I use a broken saw blade to put it in the lines. I usually have quite a lot of those lying around in my skin. Sorry, the skin's this bit of leather that's sort of at the moment holding my tools, but it's to catch all of the metal dust. So I'm just going to pop that in all of the lines. And I'm going to make sure that I don't get this on my hands because it stains your fingers yellow, which isn't the best look. Okay, so that's in all of the lines now. It doesn't have to be massively neat because we're going to polish it anyway. So that needs to sit on there for sort of maybe 30 seconds, a minute or so. But while that's oxidizing, I'll polish the inside of the ring. So the inside's nice and shiny, and then I'm going to use a bristle brush just to polish around the setting. And over the top of the setting as well. And the next thing to do is to go over to the polishing motor again, and then just polish over the whole ring. I'm going to polish over the whole ring over here. And then again, I'm going to give it a really quick ultrasonic. I don't want it to be in there for too long because I don't want to get rid of the oxidizing that I've just put on my hand. And then once I've done that, I will give it a quick wipe with the polishing cloth, just because I couldn't clean it as well as I'd like in the Sonic because of the oxidizing solution. Give that a quick wipe, and then we have a final ring. Obviously I would usually spend a lot more time on a lot of those sort of steps, so it's not as good as a ring normally would be, but It's pretty similar to this one. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Bye.